Far Cry 7 New England and time limit thoughts. So it's been touched on a number of times. We looked at it back in December, the Far Cry 7 stuff, you know, what they're going to change from the formula, Project Maverick and all of that stuff. But basically the expectation is that they're going to be moving away from the standard structure of Far Cry, and they're going to be shifting forward to a different approach. Basically, they're going to have like a time limit. So you need to save your family. As you can see, currently the current in-game timer stands at 72 hours or 24 hours in real time. But the timer can be paused when the player enters one of the safe houses. So when you play the game, like your family gets kidnapped basically, or friends or family, whatever, and you have to rescue your family within the time limit. You have 72 hours in game, 24 real world hours to do so. And if you don't save them. And so it forces the player to like act with urgency and figure it out. Some people have bashed this and have been like, sounds terrible, whatever. I like that they're trying something new. I like that they're shaking it up. You know, one of the common complaints about Far Cry is that it's basically the same game, just with a new skin every few years. You know, sometimes the new skin is awesome and is super clever and interesting, but it's basically the same thing. They're trying something totally different, totally new here. And I like that. I like them trying new stuff. And who knows, maybe it ends up working really well. For example, I really like Dead Rising. Dead Rising had the same kind of system where they had an in-game timer and you had to keep on it. And if you ignored it, you just would fail the main story quest. You know, whatever the text said when it came on screen, it was like, the truth fades into the abyss or whatever it is. But then you just play the game. You're like, yeah, the helicopter's not going to come and rescue me, but I'll just hang out in the mall, have fun, explore, whatever. It's super good time. So I think that this could work. Now it does require like major redesigns to how the game is structured. So for example, if they go with the standard, like what's the Far Cry 5 map look like? Well, maybe Far Cry 6. It's like this. If you have the game set up like this and you have a time limit, players will not be going to each and every single POI because they don't have the time to. So I think you've got to restructure how the world is designed. You have to kind of rethink that and do far fewer collectathon style layouts of POIs and instead shift towards larger POIs, larger areas that are maybe a little bit more involved, but fewer and farther in between. And again, I think Dead Rising is a good game to look at for inspiration for how they did that. But that also allows you to be much more focused and maybe tighten up the scope, because I think also some of these games suffer from feature creep and the scope getting a little bit out of control, because this is a lot to juggle, you know. And I think if you gave players this and said you have 24 hours, save your family, it would be a little too much, to be too big an ask. But I think if it's much more narrow and focused, it could work. And I think that that's something we've seen with AC Shadows, is that Ubisoft is trying hard to tighten scope and improve quality. And I think Shadows, that's why I said at the opening of my review, I think it's a great step in that direction. I think it's a great step in the right direction. Not quite there yet. I think that there's still things, you know, plenty of things I would change in Shadows, but I do think it's a step in the right direction because it's a prioritization of trying to do fewer things better instead of just a ton of stuff. Okay. So hearing them shift their approach to be much more about a tighter scope, 24 hours is how much time you have to save your family. You're not going to be doing every single little collectathon thing in the map. You're going to be trying to save your family and you're going to be focused on that. I think that that's a good direction to shift towards. It might not end up working well. It might end up being a disaster, or it might end up being phenomenal. We don't know yet. But I've seen some people be like, sounds awful, it's terrible. I'm like, I don't know. I'm actually intrigued. And at the very least, it's something new and fresh, which I'm all here for. I love that. Honestly, I will believe it when I see it. They used to make good games, but it ended up being mindless, blow, busy work. Well, exactly. That's why I think the idea of limiting it down to a specific time limit, that seems to go directly in the face of what has been the last like 10-year philosophy for Ubisoft, which has just been to go bigger, broader, with more stuff, just cram more stuff in it. And this now seems like they are intentionally limiting themselves and player time as a result, which I find interesting. I'm like, okay, let's see. If that means we have a tighter scope, that's better. I'm interested in it. Same with like Hexe. Hexe apparently is not going to be like this big open world game. It's going to be a more tight, linear narrative game, like more of a Naughty Dog structure to a Ubisoft Assassin's Creed game, which is more reminiscent of like older Assassin's Creed games, like 1 and 2 to a certain extent. I mean, technically it's open, but you get what I mean. Like it's much more narrow. So we'll see.